Good day. I hope you are well. Really excited for today's video, continuing on the topic of why emotional eating is still controlling you, because there's so many layers to this. So I want to continue with today's conversation with this theme, and I want to go into the ego mindset, because our mindset and the ego are like a massive reason why we are struggling with emotional eating and why we can't get over it. So welcome to those of you who are coming in. I'm so glad that you're here. And as I go along, feel free to interact in the comments, ask questions, leave comments, if this is resonating for you. So what is the ego? Do any of you know what your ego is? Have you ever heard of ego before? I think that this is something that's really not talked about. I never learned about it until I went on my healing journey. And a lot of my clients don't ever hear about it until we start talking about it in their client sessions. So are you aware of what the ego is, this ego mindset? Because what it really is we all have one, unless you are enlightened, which good for you if you are, but we all have one, and we are going to probably have it for our whole life. And the ego is the part of us that lives in the mind that is analytical, that is critical, that is judgmental, that wants you to compare yourself to others, your body. I'm not doing as good on this diet as this person is, and they're losing weight faster than I am. How come this person can eat one chocolate and be fine and I can't, and I eat one and I want to eat 50 or 10 or however many? The ego is the part of you that wants you to really focus on weight loss and diets and willpower and trying harder, when those things have nothing to do with overcoming emotional eating. The ego is the part of you that gets critical of your body, that voice that, you see yourself in the mirror, maybe you've gained some weight, maybe you put on some protection, I like to call it, or maybe you've tried to do really good on your diet, and then you get on the scale expecting to see that it dropped, and it didn't drop, it stayed the same, or it went up, and you're like, what the actual F? What the heck happened? And then you get critical and you get hard on yourself. That's all ego. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up or a yes in the comments, because I want to make sure this is landing for you. The ego is also the part of you that convinces you, oh, you've had a bad day. You had a good day. You had a negative interaction with someone. You did good on your diet this week. You should reward yourself with food. You should eat that. And it's also the part of you that gets really hard on you after, oh good, okay, yes, thank you so much for confirming a yes. It's also the part of you that after you emotionally eat gets really hard on you for doing so. Guilt, shame on you. I can't believe you did that. You should be ashamed. You should be embarrassed. I can't believe you lost control again. You have no willpower. Essentially, your ego's like, you suck at life and you're never going to change this. You should be, more mindful. You should have more willpower. You should have more control, right? The ego is the part of you that tells you you're not good enough, that makes you feel unworthy. It's also the part of you that pushes you into lack mentalities and negative emotions. So when you go into fear, anger, frustration, worry, irritation, jealousy, comparison, blame, projection, right? Oh, I emotionally ate because this person made me upset. We're blaming others, right? That's all ego. Some of my clients will name their ego. I had one named her Rose. She's like, yeah, Rose really took over today. So the ego probably plays one of the most massive roles in emotional eating and struggling with emotional eating, because it's a part we never learn about. And the more we diet and the more we focus on weight loss, numbers, counting calories, counting points, weighing and measuring our food, focusing on external, I need to look a certain way, that actually is all amplified by ego. Because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm putting my worth outside of myself into the way that I look or a number on the scale, and it disconnects you from going within and building worth. So the ego is born from a very young age. Our subconscious minds are fully open from age 0 to 7, and we get programmed. We all get programmed. Our family's beliefs, what we watch on the TV, read on the news, the radio, the magazines, etc. We get programmed, and we go through certain experiences as a kid. And I'll share a couple from me that really set the stage for my ego. One was when I was 5, and it was my first day on the bus. And I was so excited to make new friends, and I got on the bus, and the older boys called me fat and ugly. And then the whole bus started laughing at me and making fun of me, and it really shut me down. And then what I started to perceive was one of my limiting beliefs that my ego gave me was, you're not good enough, you're not lovable, and you are fat and ugly. So I'm going to be insecure. I'm going to hide. I'm going to feel shame. So I think we go through experiences growing up. We don't know necessarily how to cope, right? If we get bullied or someone says something or a family member says something or something happens to us, if we don't know how to cope, we create all these limiting beliefs, and our limiting beliefs are our ego, right? I'm never going to overcome emotional eating. I'm never going to, have the optimal health that I want. I'm never going to have the loving relationship I want. I'm never going to make the money I want. I'm never going to be able to grow my business. I couldn't start a business, right? Like all these limiting beliefs, this is all ego. So specifically with emotional eating, the reason that it's so tied in, and feel free to share any of your limiting beliefs in the comments or like what you're taking away from this, because learning about your ego is literally life changing. I learned about my ego about 12 years ago, and I've been working on it ever since, and I've never felt more free. And I teach it to everyone who comes into my world because it's so healing and so transformative. You don't have to be stuck with your limiting beliefs and emotions and struggles. We just have to learn how to manage our ego and learn how to take our power back. So it's very powerful. So ego really wants us to sit in that we are unworthy, that we're not good enough, and the only way to become worthy is by looking a certain way physically and aesthetically, by proving ourselves, by accomplishing X amount of external goals, by being perfect, right? That's what we're conditioned to perceive worthiness in society. How much money I have in my bank account, the kind of car I drive, and I'm all about nice things, but that does not define my worth. So it's really important that we start to understand that we've literally pulled our worth outside of ourselves, forgotten we're worthy, because we are internally. It's just that we forget, and like tried to attach it to all these external things. And then you people please, and you're putting your worth in someone else, and you're saying, okay, like if I do this thing for this person and they give me a validation that I did a good job, I can maybe feel worthy for a moment, but then it doesn't last because you don't feel worthy. You're getting it from someone else. You can't go to the store and buy a bottle of worthiness or heal my ego. Like this is where we really have to go inside and do the deeper work. No quick fix is going to help you overcome this. And that's why diets and weight scheme quick fix programs don't work, because they don't help you address the ego. They actually fuel it, because the more rules, diet rules, restriction, all of that, it really is, it fuels our ego. Because if you're like, okay, I have to do keto, or I have to do this certain diet and I have to follow it to a T and I have to be perfect, and the only way I'm going to get the results and lose the weight is if I follow it perfectly. Okay, perfection doesn't exist, and perfection is ego and comes from unworthiness and insecurity, like I need to lose weight to be good enough. And then when you fail, you get really hard on yourself, you pick yourself apart, and now you have all these food fears and food rules of like, this is how I was taught to eat, now I'm afraid to eat these other things. And so we can see how the ego can like blow out of control and like really have a significant impact on us. Yeah, great question. How do you take your power back from your ego? I am going to talk about that. Stay tuned, and if you can't watch the whole live, I will post it afterward in my feed so you'll be able to watch it, but I am going to talk about that as I just build up some more awareness here. So how is this tied to weight or to emotional eating? Number one, hi Jolie, welcome, glad to see you. How is this tied to emotional eating? Number one, you don't feel good enough. You don't feel worthy. You feel insecure in your body, or there's some aspect of you that feels insecure. So maybe it's that you grew up and your parents made comments about your weight, or your mom dieted, or you were, put on a diet or watched her diet or whatever it was. And then you start to associate that, like, in order to look a certain way, I need to eat a certain way, or I'm not good enough if I have to go on a diet at a young age. That's one example. There's many. So then you start doing diets, you start restricting, and then you start watching TV and reading magazines. Like, how many of you can relate to pulling out a magazine? You see like the model on the photo and she's got like the quote unquote perfect body, but they don't tell you it's photoshopped. And then you start comparing yourself, and then you get hard on yourself because you're thinking, how come I don't look like that? There must be something wrong with me. When there's nothing wrong with you, there is something wrong with the industry of entertainment, where they're not putting disclaimers on their photos saying this was completely photoshopped, this is not real, we're selling an illusion. That's the problem. You're not the problem. The industry and the way that they sell and show is an issue, because all it does is make us feel more insecure. If we feel insecure with our bodies, we start comparing. And it's not just magazines, it's television, it's Hollywood, it's social media. And it's not okay, and because we're not taught how to navigate it, and we're not taught that it's fake. A lot of it is fake, right? So then we get insecure, And then we think, oh my God, like, we scramble, we get into this chaotic, stressed energy. I'm glad you agree, Christine. Welcome. But then we get in this frazzled, overwhelmed, chaotic energy, and all of that's ego. And you're like, okay, well, what do I do? Well, and society tells us eat less, exercise more, go on diets, get surgeries, take pills, do all these things to aesthetically look perfect, because then you'll finally be happy. But the thing is even if you lose the weight, you're still not fully happy because you didn't go inside and do the internal work. Like when I quote unquote, before I started binge eating a lot, I lost the weight restrictively. I don't recommend anyone do that, but I was like really wanting to have the perfect body, and I lost the weight in unhealthy ways. And I was not happy at all. I was so critical. I was so arrogant. My ego was so front and center. And then, of course, the binge eating started, and I gained a ton of weight. And then I was even harder on myself. So that did not fix anything for me. And it doesn't for anybody. Yes, when your body feels safe and you heal, your body will go to where it's natural and it'll be easy to maintain. But weight loss does not help you build worthiness, and it doesn't help you heal your relationship with your ego. It's so important to address that. Yeah, Christine, totally. That's what happened to me too. I restricted heavily, and then I went to a barbecue and decided to eat ice cream cake and things I wasn't allowing myself to have, and had my first binge. And then it turned into the all or nothing, where I'd binge, and then the next day I'd go to the gym for 2 hours and not eat until dinner and have a salad, and then get so hungry and binge. And all of this all or nothing behavior and mentality is ego based, because again, it's based off insecurity, it's based off of unworthiness. I don't feel good enough, right? I need to look a certain way to be treated a certain way. I need to look a certain way to be happy. This is what we're taught, right? Yeah, Julie, it's like women, we've been so attacked. It is like a never-ending cycle. I totally agree. However, this is why I want to have this conversation with all of you, because we get to end the cycle and take our power back. But first, it's important for us to understand where all of this has come from. It's not your fault. It's not because you have bad luck and because you have bad genes and because you don't deserve to heal and be happy and free and connect with your body and all of these things that you want. It's that we're conditioned and the ego's front and center. Like one example, look at the news, look at the media. They spew fear. It is ego-based. And then you get all worked up, and then that impacts your day, right? If you watch the media, we don't watch the news because it's just a fear factory. Same with certain movies or genres. I would never watch a horror movie because I could it's just, no, it's disturbing. I don't want to watch that. But anyway, back to emotional eating, because I feel like there's just so much that's tied to this. So when we're in this cycle of I need to look good, so I'm going to diet, but then you fail on the diet because diets promote all or nothing thinking. I'm either all in and have to be perfect on the diet, or I'm falling off and I'm going the other way and I'm losing control with food. I'm binging, I'm overeating, I'm emotionally eating. And then you're panicking because the scale goes up and clothes are fitting tighter. And now I need to try the next diet and quick fix because I need to drop this weight, right? And then you go back to the other side and you diet, and then you fail again, and then you have more food rules and restrictions, and your mind just keeps getting more rigid. That's the ego. All I can eat are fresh vegetables and this. I was to the point where I was I'm not even going to a restaurant because I don't know what kind of oils they're using. And it's called orthorexia nervosa, where you only eat the same 20 foods over and over because you fear if you eat anything outside of that food circle that you're going to lose control with your weight and with food again. It is a real thing, and we want to heal that, because having that level of food fear and fear of losing control with your body, we want to heal that. But that's all ego. The ego thrives off your suffering. The ego wants you to stay stuck. The ego doesn't want you to keep watching this Instagram live or address it or heal your relationship with food in your body. Your ego wants you to keep in the habits that you are and not change anything, because it has massive control. And our egos have controlled us for most of our lives unless we have been aware that we have one and done the work to take our power back. But literally, the ego has called our shots for our entire lives. And it can create a lot of conflict and suffering and struggle. And we don't, that's not what humanity is meant to have, but that's what's been conditioned into us. So I think that's why it's so important for us to understand this first, and why I'm spending so much time talking about it. But like I said, the ego is the part of you that convinces you the only way to be happy is to lose weight and go on a diet or exercise more and restrict. The ego is the part of you that's also oh, you had a bad day, you should eat that. You had a good day, you should eat that. Reward yourself. It wants to justify why you should, but then it gets hard on you when you do, and then you do too much, and then it brings on the guilt and the anger and the shame and the frustration. The ego is the part of you that convinces you to people please. And most of the women that reach out to me are people pleasers. I used to be one too. Are you a people pleaser? Have you caught yourself in saying yes when you really want to say no, but you fear saying no to others for fear of upsetting them, triggering them, causing conflict, even though that probably wouldn't happen? And then you are overbooked and overwhelmed, and that triggers emotional eating. The ego governs people pleasing because the ego, of course, wants to convince you to stay in insecurity and stay disempowered, which is saying yes when you want to say no instead of setting healthy boundaries, because it's scary, right? Microchick, right? Totally been there. Son you love. It's not fun, but this is why it's so important for us to have these conversations around the ego, because that's what's keeping us there. Fear of judgment. What will people think if I step into my power, right? And it's so important because if we don't address the ego and the insecurity, you keep people pleasing to chase your worth. You're putting your worth in other people. You're seeking validation from others. Because it's like, well, if I do this thing and say yes to help them out, they're going to thank me and be appreciative, or be like, oh, I'm so glad you did this. You're so great. And then you receive the validation. You get a little dopamine hit, right? You get your reward. Wow. And then you're like, oh, this person approves of me. Maybe I can feel good enough for a moment. But it's false, because nothing external will go inside and fill your own void and help you reconnect with your worthiness. We already have worthiness within us. Love, compassion, joy. It's just that we've disconnected from them because the ego's been so in control. Hopefully that makes sense. But people pleasing is fully controlled by your ego being in control. However, even though it's uncomfortable, when we start to take our power back and start saying no, asking for help, setting boundaries, making ourselves a priority, which the ego kicks up a stink with that too and wants you to feel guilty. You can't take time for yourself. You have to take care of your family. You have to take care of this and this. You're too busy. Self-care, that's woo-woo. Like, that's not going to do anything. That's what the ego says, because the ego knows if she takes the steps to take her power back and connects and builds her worth, like, I'm screwed and I'm not going to have control anymore. And your ego like has to go in the corner. But that's what helps us change all of this. It's so powerful. So it's really important that we address and work on our ego to overcome people pleasing, because people pleasing is fueling this whole cycle of overwhelm and stress that becomes emotional eating triggers. People pleasing is such a big emotional eating trigger. Diets is an emotional eating trigger. Weighing in and not being happy with the number on the scale is an emotional eating trigger. Expectation of like, if I eat a certain way and exercise, I should lose weight, and then you don't. That is ego, and that creates emotional eating. There's so many ego-based emotions that create it. I've talked about the negative self-talk, but another thing, and this is more of an energetic aspect, is the more our ego's in control, the lower our energy frequency. And then we just feel like lower mood all the time. So if I'm constantly stressed and I'm frazzled and I'm overwhelmed and I'm in chaotic energy and I'm eating all this processed food and then trying to scramble to get back on a diet, I'm probably not going to be feeling a lot of happiness, joy, gratitude, peace, contentment, connection with myself. Probably not going to be very tapped into my intuition, because my energy frequency drops. And when our frequency drops, we feel more negative emotions like shame, guilt, anger, frustration, blame, jealousy, comparison, agitation, anxiety, hopelessness. These emotions all vibrate at a very low level. They're very dense, and they really make you feel like you're drugged down. And when we're in low frequency, we're more prone, and let me know if this makes sense, but when we're in a low vibration, this is where it's easier for us to get sick. Our immune system's more compromised. We get more physical symptoms. We stress our hormones out more. It's easier to gain weight. And when we're in lower frequency emotions, we participate in more low frequency behaviors, aka self-sabotage, self-sabotaging with food. And then if you're eating a lot of processed food that is made in a lab, that lowers your frequency, that dims your light, disconnects you from your intuition, gives you more brain fog, and that contributes to your moodiness and negative emotions as well. Maybe I have some clients, it's food and alcohol. Maybe it's shopping mindlessly and eating. Like, there's different combinations. And so it's really important for us to also understand that this isn't just emotional, this is energetic as well. And we have to address all the pieces, the physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and in my opinion, also the spiritual. But the more asphyxiated you are that you need to look a certain way, because we've all been conditioned that like external is everything when it's not. Like, yes, we want to be healthy and we want to feel good in our bodies, but asphyxiating on needing to look a certain way, I mean this with love, but you are seeing an epidemic of women in this world who do not like their bodies at all. And they are altering them and injecting things and doing surgeries and putting all of these foreign things into their bodies to try and fit an image that has been brainwashed or so ingrained into their brain. But regardless of how much money they spend on altering their body, they're not happy, because it's just like trying to use diets to lose weight. It does not work. It does not work. And then you put your health at risk because you're chasing your worth, and no matter what you do and how much of it you do, you still don't feel happy. That's why it's so important for us to build our worth. And I know women are going to do with their bodies what they want to do with their bodies, but like, it is to me another form of self-sabotage, because a lot of these things that these women end up doing are make them sick at some point. And we don't want that, right? So it's so important that we learn how to go inward, and we learn how to disconnect from the scale. I would suggest stop weighing in every day, because that is, control. I need to have control over my body. I need to have control over food, and control comes from ego, because what's below control is anger and fear. And what's below that is insecurity. I don't feel good enough. I've got to alter my external image so that I can get approval from society. When you don't need approval from society. This is about you approving of yourself, because the more you love yourself and you build this connection and you take your power back, you radiate confidence. You are such a light, and you already are, but it's just like reconnecting and re-accessing this part of you that maybe you've never met before, that you haven't for a really long time. So it's so important to address this, because as long as we're focused on willpower, eat less, exercise more, I've got to lose the weight, that's the thing I have to do, that's going to solve all my problems, you're letting your ego call the shots, instead of you going, you know what, that's not working for me. Yes, of course I want my body to feel safe, and I want my body to release whatever protection doesn't serve her. However, trying to punish myself with more diets and more insane exercise that I don't want to do, versus mindful movement and negative self-talk and setting ridiculous goals of losing 30 pounds in a month is not going to help me get where I want to go. It's just not going to get me where I want to go. So we have to be willing at some point to admit that that is not serving me. I actually want to learn about my ego. I want to do my deeper work. I want to really understand what's going on here. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. So let's talk about, I want you to feel this out, because this is where we're going to start to build awareness around what it feels like to be in your power versus what it feels like when you give your power away to your ego, because it's a very different feeling. And you can start to practice this. And this is where when you build a self-care routine and you just sit for a few minutes and you tune in, okay, am I in my power? Is my ego in control? And power and control are different. Power comes from love, mindfulness, confidence, nurturing, compassion, understanding, respect. Control comes from fear, anger, right? Insecurity, shame, guilt, fear. That's where the control comes from. It's not from an empowering place. It comes from insecurity. Power comes from security and worth. So I want you to tap in, and I want you to think about your ego. And when you think about maybe a stressful thing that happened today, or maybe, oh, thank you so much, I really appreciate that, Carzillion. I wish it showed people's names, but I'm glad you're here. So I want you to tune in, and I want you to think about your ego. You may even want to name your ego. Share it in the comments. I'm curious what you're going to name your ego, because it kind of brings a bit of a humor to it, right? Because we don't want to be so serious with it. But think about a negative experience where you emotionally ate and you felt guilty afterward. When you think about doing self-care, you feel guilty or you feel frustrated because you can't build consistency, or maybe you had a negative interaction with someone, or you people pleased when you didn't want to, right? But just think of an experience where you felt completely out of your power, where you gave your power away, where you went into negative self-talk, where you felt anger, shame, guilt, fear, worry. And I want you to first tune into how that physically feels in the body when you give your power away. So I'm going to share some examples, but tune in and then please share with me what comes up in the chat here, because I want to hear from you guys. So for me, when I give my power away, I get a massive drain of energy from my whole body. I feel tightness in my chest. It's almost like I'm breathing more shallow. I feel kind of tightness. It's just my whole body gets tight, and I'm right? Sometimes it might be a headache. stomach ache, anxiety. That used to be a big one for me. Anxiety, that's what would, feel like when I gave my power away. But what are the physical sensations that come up in the body? Tightness, little knot in your stomach, a headache, maybe your mouth gets really dry, maybe you get brain fog, energy drop, more anxious and depressed. Yeah, totally. And that's because when we go into this stress response, if we're already like consistently stressed, maybe there's hormone issues, gut issues, and you're emotionally eating, we really deplete our serotonin and dopamine. We produce serotonin in the gut, and that helps us boost our mood. And of course, dopamine, we lower it when we don't sleep well, have more stress, eat more processed foods, but then we seek the dopamine high, the pleasure response from emotionally eating. Grind my teeth and anxious for sure. Good awareness. Thank you, ladies, for sharing this. This is really important. So then it's like, okay, well, what does it feel like when I'm in my power? What does it feel like? Well, I'll tell you, and I want you ladies to share. My shoulders sit back. My heart is more open. My body feels very flexible and flowing. I don't have any physical pains. I don't have any discomfort in my body. I can breathe really easily. In fact, I feel like there's a boost in energy, right? There's a groundedness, like I feel so rooted and sure of myself. What does it feel like for you when you're in your power? Like I feel this huge light come out of me and I just want to share it with the world. That's why I come on and do these lives, because it really, like, I want to share this with you. I want you to feel this way too. I want you to feel like you're in your light and in your power most of the time, because the beauty of doing this deeper work is that you can get to the point where you go into your ego, you maybe give your power away for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you build awareness, and then you take your power back. Like that's how fast you can shift. And that's pretty much to the point that I am now, and I teach that. So you can do it too, but it just takes time. Like I've been working on this for 12 years, so be patient with yourself. But what does it feel like when you are in your power? Faith, I'm confident, and negative things don't affect me. Exactly. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Faith feels like floating. Yes, right? I don't know, I just feel like I want to go out and hug everybody because I'm just like, I want to give love. I feel so good, right? I show up in my business powerfully. I show up in my relationships powerfully. I own and take responsibility when I've done something and I don't blame it on somebody else. I own it. And when I'm in my power, I set healthy boundaries, and I also don't tolerate being treated certain ways by other people. So if someone else is in their ego and they're all flustered and they're projecting and they're blaming and they're reacting, I can send them love and go like, this isn't the right time to talk about this. Let's have a conversation once you're not so triggered, right? And the beauty of knowing your ego, and then you can start teaching this, if you're in a relationship, is arguing just doesn't happen, because you're like, oh, I'm in my ego right now, or you're in your ego. We know that. We're not going to go ego versus ego because that's what creates conflict. And I'm just going to understand what's going on for me and own this, and we can talk about it. That's the power also of working on this, not only for your from yourself, but for relationships, love relationships, friends, running a business, in your work, with your family, your kids. It's so powerful. Julie says confident, positive, able to pivot if something doesn't go as planned. Yes, flexibility, Julie. I love that. We are so much more flexible when we're in our power. When we give our power away, we're rigid. We need control. My expectation wasn't met. Now I'm upset. Plan didn't go as planned. I'm upset. I'm triggered. And thank you so much for sharing the live. I really appreciate that. I'm sending you so much love. Right? So this is the awareness of difference. So control, expectation, ego, blame. I'm not owning my stuff. I need to project on others. I get a rise out of drama. That's all ego, and it's icky. Low vibe, doesn't help you at all. And this is the interesting thing, is the more front and center our ego is, the more we may mirror and attract other people that are really in their ego. So it's a learning opportunity. Okay, so for those of you who have been patiently waiting for me to talk about how to take your power back, I'm going to give some things that you can try, and then I'm going to also share some other resources and items that you can step more into, because whilst I can share some things in this live, I have a lot of other things you can tap into that you can spend more time in that are going to help you take this way further. Why do we self-damage even after feeling in our power? Because, that's a great question. So I'll answer that first, and then we'll go into how do you take your power back. we self-sabotage because there's still healing to do. There are lessons to learn. And when we are, hello, wow, we just had a really big influx of people come in. Welcome. So the question was, why do we self-damage after feeling power? So in this case, like using emotional eating, I think it's really important to understand that if we emotionally eat or we go into some kind of self-sabotage, the reason that it happens is because there's lessons for us to learn, right? So if I get really triggered by something someone says, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. If I get really triggered by what someone says and then I project, like say one of you came on here and you left a negative comment, right? And I was like, blah, 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 and I reacted, like that would be my ego. And then what I would do is go, wow, I really want to work on holding my power and not giving it away if someone says something negative, right? Or with emotional eating, every time you emotionally eat and you're like, oh, I did it again, I can't believe like I ate that food, I lost control, the scale went up, like whatever it was that made it happen. There's something to learn because the ego is a teacher. Emotional eating is a teacher. The weight struggle, the weight gain that you're experiencing is a teacher. So welcome. So I think it's so important that we start to perceive our self-sabotage or our struggle as a teacher, because to me, the universe is bringing it up for us to look at it, learn the lessons, and then be free of it. And if we don't learn this time, I guarantee you it's going to happen again, because every trigger that came up for me for emotional eating needed to happen so that I could learn and understand all of the different things that triggered me. And it wasn't just one or two things. It wasn't just sadness and boredom. There was so many layers. And so I needed that to happen so that I could learn and fully gain freedom. That was really important. And then it's like, same with, different insecurities and limiting beliefs and behaviors. So say your behavior is that you need validation from your partner. Like, tell me you love me. Like, I need to hear that you love me. Tell me I'm beautiful. Do I look good in this outfit? You need validation, right? Or it's people pleasing. Like, oh, I better go do this thing for this person because I don't upset them and I need validation. I'm feeling low on myself. Right? So if you find yourself in this need to receive from others and get whatever you need from others to feel good enough, the lesson is there is deeper work for you to do to build your worthiness and learn how to take your power back. It's all lessons. Yeah. Freedom to control how you and your body respond to triggers. Exactly, because this is the thing, is the powerful thing for you to have control over is your thoughts. Because what I can do is go, ooh, I'm judging. Ooh, I'm comparing. Ooh, I have an urge to emotionally eat. And then I can either give in and let my ego like control me and go to that, or I can go, interesting. I'm having this reaction. I'm having this emotion. I want to say this thing out loud, but ooh, that's my ego. It's not an appropriate time for that. And I'm saying that in my mind and I'm going like, this feels more empowering. This feels more compassionate, right? So it's a teacher. It's just that we have had a lot of suffering and struggle. Like every single person on this planet, on this live has gone through something. Right? We all have. And it's to have compassion for ourselves and what we've gone through. We just want to heal. Like when you're struggling with emotional eating, and if you are open, feel free to share in the comments, like how many years, how many months, how many decades have you been struggling with emotional eating? Right? And emotional eating is eating for any reason other than physical nourishment. So boredom, sadness, happy, reward. I failed on my diet. The number on the scale isn't what I want to see, right? It's negative self-talk. I had a bad day. I had a stressful interaction. I've been people pleasing. My schedule's so overbooked, right? And so when all of this happens, it triggers us to emotionally eat because we want to use food to numb. We use it as a coping. Right? John T. Jesse V says, I struggled for a few years. Have you overcome it? I hope you have. But when all this comes up, it's all ego. And if we don't realize we have an ego, it's really hard for us to, number one, like want to take the time to really look at our mindsets, our behaviors, and our limiting beliefs and what's created the behavior of emotional eating or binging and purging, like whatever it is that you're struggling with. And then the other part of it is it's important for us to look at like where this has all come from. We literally see things have changed post-COVID. People are literally very stressed, hence it enhances. Yeah, definitely. A lot of emotional eating was either relapsed or started for a lot of people. And this is another thing. The beauty of doing your deeper work and addressing the emotional eating is that you build your worth finally. The insecurities go away with the body. You learn how to love yourself. You learn how to be so deeply in your power. And then you never know what other miracles might come of it. Like, I wouldn't have my business if I wouldn't have healed my relationship with food and my body. I wouldn't have learned about my hormone health, my gut health, cravings. I wouldn't have learned how to be in my power. I would have never learned about my ego. Same with my clients. I wouldn't have the success, the love, the relationships. I wouldn't have had the healthy tools to cope through COVID, right? And I know it really has impacted a lot of people, and my heart goes out to everyone, but we have a choice to heal and step deeper into our power and actually not let external circumstance sway us. Truly. We create our reality, and we can create a really good one if we focus on that. But it's hard when we have an ego that's there and there's all kinds of circumstances going on. So how do we learn to take our power back? So first, it is about being aware of what your ego and control feels like versus you and your power. And we've already talked about that. If you joined after that, you can watch the replay of this. I'll post it on my feed. So first, it's to be aware that your ego's in control. So what are some of the thoughts or beliefs that you know once you hear them in the mind, that's your ego? I want you to share. So examples for me used to be like, I'd get on the scale and the number would go up. And then I'd get frustrated, angry, sad, shocked, overwhelmed, right? And then my ego would take over, and then I'd be frantic and panicking like, okay, today I've got to restrict, I've got to go to the gym for longer. And then I'd end up emotionally eating because I was so overwhelmed, right? So it could be like, you know what, like, I'm really frustrated with like this person and I really don't want to talk to them right now because they always dump all their stuff on me, and then I take on their emotion, and I'm an empath and I'm really sensitive, right? And then you end up saying yes to seeing them and hearing from them, thank you. And then you feel like you've taken on all their stuff and now you're upset and overwhelmed, right? Maybe you've seen something on TV that triggered you to get really emotional. Maybe your spouse said something that really triggered you, or you saw a friend and they said something that triggered you, or you started comparing yourself on social media. Maybe you went on to do an Instagram live and nobody showed up and that really triggered you. Whatever it is, you've got to be aware of your ego being in control and the limiting beliefs you have. So a journal exercise that I would encourage all of you to do if you're open is to actually write down the limiting thoughts that you have, because the more aware you are of your limiting thoughts and what triggers you to give your power away, the more awareness you're going to have to catch the first signs of what it feels like to give your power away and take your power back, okay? And then the second thing is, okay, if my ego's in control and this is how I'm feeling, what does this have to teach me? Well, maybe with the instance of the friend that always dumps the stuff on me, right? And then I feel a drain of energy afterward. Maybe I have to set some boundaries, right? So if I'm already stressed and I've already had an overwhelming day, maybe I'm actually not going to go and see that person. And maybe I'm going to let them know, hey, maybe by the end of the week, I'll talk to you, or we'll see each other. Or maybe you tell them, you know what, I know you have a lot going on. However, like, I can't, our whole day of hanging out cannot be complaining because it really drains me. So I'm happy to give you a few minutes and then we're going to like focus on something else. So boundaries are really important to help us take our power back. Blocking off time in your schedule to do self-care, that's also really important. It's important for us to have time to be aware of our emotions, to build awareness, to take care of ourselves, to calm our nervous systems down, to look at the emotional eating triggers. Why am I struggling with emotional eating? Like, that's so important. If we don't take the time to pause and build awareness around our triggers, awareness around what it feels like when I give my power away to my ego and how to take it back, awareness around my limiting beliefs and affirmations and what I want to feel instead, like, how are we possibly supposed to change it? We cannot change it frazzled, overbooked, and overwhelmed. Okay? So journal, like, what are my limiting beliefs, and like, what is a new belief I want to have instead that is more empowering and then positive, right? And then we start using different self-care tools to shift it. It's really powerful. We can also declare, like, ego, I see you, I acknowledge you. I'm not tolerating that right now. I'm not giving my power away. I'm not going to choose that. I'm staying in my power. Right? And then you may want to do some breath or like do something to just like declare, I'm not letting fear take over. I'm not letting procrastination take over. I'm not letting doubt take over. I actually don't need to emotionally eat right now. I don't need to eat that. What I really need instead is X. So this is very complex. So obviously I could stay on this live for hours, but if you're loving what you're hearing, and you want to go deeper into the ego, the first thing I recommend is my podcast. It's called the No Sugarcoating Podcast. It's on iTunes and all podcast apps, as well as my website, amberapproved.ca. The link is in the link tree in my bio, so you can just click and subscribe to the No Sugarcoating Podcast. There are 300 episodes, and in most of them, I talk about the ego and emotional eating, hormone health, gut health, stress, self-care, people-pleasing, like all the things I've talked about today. You will hear a lot more in depth there. So if you haven't listened or subscribed yet, please do so, because that is going to be very powerful for you. If you're going, I really want to work on this, I feel like I need more than a podcast, I feel like I actually want to invest in something. If you're wanting to talk more about your unique health journey and your struggles with emotional eating, binges, binging and purging, gut issues, hormone health, etc., you can click the link in my link tree and book a 30-minute body freedom call or send me a DM. And I'm happy to talk to you about this. So it's $50 USD, and then we talk about one-on-one support, or I have a group program right now as well that you can also opt in for, and we can address all of these things in one of those settings. So feel free to DM me or just send me. I'm so glad to hear that. That's amazing. Thank you so much for the love. And it's an honor to help people overcome emotional eating. That's why I'm on this planet. It's my purpose. So you can reach out and book a body freedom call, and you can DM me. I'm happy to chat about what support looks like as well and talk to you there. And then the Body Freedom Unleashed is the 7-month group program that starts next Wednesday, May 11th. It is going to be 7 months, and we're going to address everything I've talked about today in depth: emotional eating, binge eating, the ego, power versus ego, how to take your power back. We're going to work so much on your limiting thoughts and beliefs, the people pleasing, the proving, the perfectionism. We're going to work on your gut health and your hormone health. We're going to work on building a beautiful self-care routine that you love, mindful eating, ditching diets, ditching old diet mentalities, freeing yourself from the weight struggles, right? Freeing yourself from being a slave to the scale and getting out of the food jail, and finally building food and body freedom. So if any of you are wanting to get more details on that program, it is still on early bird pricing until Sunday. We're going to be connecting every month for 2 calls, a 90-minute session and a 60-minute Q&A. You get direct connection with me to ask questions, get coached, receive support to help you overcome emotional eating and binging and gain food and body freedom. As well, there will be plenty of worksheets. There will be plenty of homework and recommendations, and I'm going to be holding the space for you for 7 months. So not only do you have the live sessions, you can access the replays if you can't make it live. We're also going to be doing a Voxer app. So it's like a text chat app, so you can ask for support anytime through the 7 months of the program and coaching between our live sessions, and it's literally like having, a 7-month container or a program in a group setting. So if any of you have questions about that, you can send me a DM, and I'm happy to provide more details. The early bird rate is a savings of $890 USD, so it's $1,333 US right now. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. There's many resources available. Stay tuned for a lot more lives to come, as well as a lot more like masterclasses and little programs. And there's just going to be so many offerings, and you can visit amberapproved.ca as well. I have some really powerful online programs that are smaller, like if you're wanting to learn about your weight blocks and you're struggling with weight and you want to see the bigger perspective of what weight gain and struggles losing weight really represents, there's a release masterclass series there that you can join. That is $111, and it's 30 sessions, and it's so powerful, and you get them for life. So I'll let you go and dig around if that feels resonant at amberapproved.ca. Subscribe to the podcast and send me a DM if you want to chat more about support. I'm happy to have a conversation with you so you can gain this food and body freedom that you seek. Again, thank you so much for sharing this live with your audience. I'm so grateful to have had you all here today. Let's learn how to take our power back from our ego. You are so deserving and worthy to heal and gain this freedom. It's just that sometimes it takes time, and sometimes it takes reaching out for some support to help you get there. So have a beautiful rest of your day. If you missed the beginning of this live, I will post it so you can watch it and catch up. And we'll see you again very, very soon. Take care.